So now this is part 3 of dealing with difficult delegates. And the last two ones that I'm going to talk about are controlling delegates and then what we call alphas. Controlling delegates can be the toughest ones to deal with because they want to control the paper, they want to control the working group, they want to control everything. But going up against a controlling delegate one-on-one is inadvisable. You don't want to get involved in a face-to-face battle with somebody, and especially in front of a group. The best way to counter the efforts of a controlling delegate is to control things by showing initiative and building coalitions. You want to build support for yourself and others early. So don't wait until a situation develops where you suddenly find a controlling delegate sort of working their way and trying to take over a group. If you're able to go ahead and build support for yourself and build support for others immediately, you're going to be able to maintain control more easily, especially if you show initiative and start going from the point at which everybody's talking about ideas to be the one who says, hey, we should start putting this stuff in writing. We should start putting together a working paper. What this will do is it'll ensure or at least increase the likelihood that you have control over the paper, and it puts you in the position to sort of resist challenges from a controlling delegate. Now, as a general rule, the harder a controlling delegate has to work to assert control over a group, the less effective they're going to be. And that's why it's so important to take steps early in the process, but you have to do it diplomatically. You can't just try and freeze someone out. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the key is to go ahead and get started right away. That when the conference starts, when the committee starts meeting, when you get together in your first suspension of the meeting, be from the very beginning one of those assertive people. You should listen, talk and listen, actively listen, but make sure you're paying attention. You're assessing the delegates around you, but also make sure that you're showing initiative. Now, if you've got a controlling delegate, let's say your working group has been formed, you've got a controlling delegate, and they're making it more difficult for the working group to make progress, to get things accomplished. One of the things you can do is pull individual delegates aside and explain the situation to them as you see it. Tell them that you think that this delegate is making it harder to get things done, but pay attention to how they respond. If they're interpreting the actions of the controlling delegate in more favorable terms, if they're going ahead and they're seeing the controlling delegate as a leader, don't try and change their minds. Don't try and change their minds. Maybe the controlling delegate is actually just being a really good leader. If that's what's going on, you're going to have to think about different ways to go ahead and combat that. So be patient. If what you really have is a controlling delegate, eventually he's going to piss them off. And if you've already come to them before and said, hey man, I feel like this guy's impeding progress, or I think she's making it harder to get stuff done, and they haven't been pissed off before, but now all of a sudden the controlling delegate is starting to sort of grate on them, they'll come to you, right? And pay attention to how people react. Now, once you have enough support among the group, you can confront the controlling delegate, but again, as always, you have to do it in a diplomatic way. And it's similar to one of the approaches we talked about before. One of the things you could do is take them aside. Hey, can you come over here and can I talk to you for a second? You want to avoid any kind of embarrassment. You want to avoid embarrassing them by saying something that's going to be hard for them to hear. And you want to, quite frankly, avoid it if they jump back at you, right? You don't want that to happen in front of a group. When you're going to get ready to sort of to confront a controlling delegate, always compliment them first and be specific. And then suggest that you think that their approach isn't fostering open discussion, that it's not increasing dialogue, and that you think that the paper is going to be better and more likely to be supported if you can get more voices in. Make it clear that you value their input, and if possible, like I say, identify a specific noteworthy contribution. Hey, I really like the way you made this proposal on, I keep going back to the same ones on all these videos. I really like your proposal on education. Or I really like your proposal for how to put solar panels in this particular area. Whatever it happens to be, let them know that you value their contribution, but just make it clear that you also value the contributions of others in the working group, and that what you want and what they want is the same thing. the best working paper possible. So make it clear to them that you're not trying to supplant them. You're not trying to tell them what to do. You're not trying to be a controlling delegate. What you're trying to do is open up the discussion within the group to go ahead and make and allow everyone the opportunity to contribute. Here's the thing. If you're successful in doing that, if the delegate goes back and they stop being controlling and they're more inclusive, and now everybody's participating, the delegates are going to know that you are the ones who got that accomplished. And they're going to see that you were able to accomplish it diplomatically. That is the sign of a true leader. Getting everybody on board, getting everybody moving in the right direction, and doing so in a way that is diplomatic, that doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. Now, the last group I want to talk about are alphas. And generally speaking, people think of somebody being an alpha as being a good thing, the alpha dog, I'm the one in charge. Alphas, I'm not using that as a positive term. These are delegates that possess many of the qualities that we've talked about in this entire set of videos, right? They can be talkative, they can be stubborn, they can be controlling, they can be rude, and when they don't get their way, they can also be really negative. The thing about alphas, the quality that they possess that's most maddening, is that generally speaking, they tend to be very articulate and very intelligent. So to help you deal with alphas, here are some suggestions. If the alpha's not part of your working group, and the alpha's not a key ally that you need to go ahead and work with, just avoid them, right? Just avoid them. If they seek you out, take it as a compliment, right? That they're looking at you and they're thinking, that person's my competition. So if they're seeking you out, take that as a compliment, but resist the temptation to engage with them, right? Also, avoid getting frustrated. Alphas feed off of conflict and control. If you keep your distance, if you remain calm, if you continue focusing on your working papers and resolutions, they'll get bored and moved on. Alphas like people who fight back, right? You don't need to surrender to them, but you don't need to engage with them. The alpha continues to come after you. See if you can get one of your allies to engage them as a diversionary tactic. Again, it should be a strong delegate. We've talked about this strategy before. It should be a strong delegate who understands the strategy and what's being employed, right? Their goal should be to engage, to keep the alpha engaged as long as possible. So you walk up to someone and somebody who you know is a strong delegate, who's very articulate, and you go ahead and you say to them, hey, look, every time we start making progress on the working paper, Australia comes over and just starts to engage everybody. Can you go over? I've tried to go ahead and deal with them and prevent them from interfering, and I just can't. You're really good. Can you go ahead and if you see him coming over, can you just intercept him and then just start talking to him and keep him busy? We'll go ahead and we'll start working on the working paper. And I know the ideas, and this requires you to know what's going on. I know that you're really interested in this and this and this, and I'll make sure that gets into the working paper. And then when you chase them away, I'll come back and I'll say, look, this is what we are working on, and make sure that you're cool with the wording, right? So you let them know, I need you to run interference, but I'm not trying to kick you out of the group, and I'm not trying to prevent your ideas from getting in there. I'm just trying to get you, because you're so talented, to go ahead and interfere and run interference with the alpha. Now, if the alpha is in your working group or is a key ally that you need to work with, you may have to employ different strategies, right? If you have delegates in that group that can handle the alpha, let them, right? It's the same strategy that I was just talking about before. If possible, assign a strong delegate to deal with them and their questions while you continue to make progress on your working paper or on your resolution. But be sure to let the delegate know how much you appreciate their willingness to run interference for the working group, and be sure to thank them individually, but also when your working group is together and the alpha is away, thank them publicly. Let everybody know, hey, Canada was running interference and kept, kept Australia away for a while so we could get stuff done. And I just wanted to publicly thank you because I tried to go ahead and keep them away and I just couldn't do it, right? Don't be afraid to give other people credit. That's one of the sort of unknown things about being a leader. Being a leader means giving credit to other people, not just taking credit, right? When you're the person who's giving credit and people value the fact that you're giving credit, you are the leader. You are the leader. Now, if you don't have somebody to run interference, you may have to intervene yourself to ensure that other delegates have the opportunity to speak. And this is where alphas become a problem. Okay, once again, the tactic is best used early in the conference, early in the caucus, when you see the alpha dominating the conversation. By intervening early, you make it clear to the alpha that their attempt to assert control over the group will not go uncontested, that it's going to go ahead and there's going to be a battle. Sometimes what will happen is they'll just decide to go look elsewhere. But if you decide to intervene, you have to be diplomatic. Again, there's no point at which letting somebody else's rude behavior or if somebody else is being aggressive, that's never an excuse for you to be aggressive too. So what you can do is if you're having a conversation and people are talking in the working group, they're all talking, and the alpha interrupts another delegate, the intervention that you can do can be as simple as saying when the alpha starts talking, excuse me, I believe the delegate from Canada was speaking. And then turn to the delegate from Canada and say, I'm sorry, what were you saying? Oftentimes this will be enough to get them to the alpha to stop talking and allow others to speak. Additionally, when you intervene on behalf of the others' right to speak, it builds your credibility for wanting to be inclusive, right? You're not trying to take over the alpha's position. What you're trying to do is you're trying to create an open dialogue. When the delegate finishes speaking, so the alpha interrupted, you stopped and said, excuse me, right? And you go back to the other delegate. When the delegates finish speaking, don't allow the alpha to jump in. You should immediately ask another delegate in the group to share their thoughts on an issue, right? Or what do you think about that? Do you agree? If there's a specific issue that the group would benefit from discussing, you can ask the delegate what they think about that particular issue, right? So if you interrupt the alpha, then another delegate starts speaking and they bring up the issue of education, then you can turn to the other delegate, a new delegate, as soon as they're done and say, so what do you think in terms of education? How would you go ahead and approach that? The key to this approach is that you're asserting control over the group by allowing others to speak. You're asserting control by creating an environment where everybody has the opportunity to go ahead and contribute. Now, if you're confronted by an alpha and they pressure you to answer questions, they walk up to you and they start bombarding you with questions, there are a variety of strategies that you can adopt. Don't freeze up. You never want to freeze up. First, if they ask you a question, as you respond to their question, explain yourself fully and thoroughly. Take your time, right? Take your time to explain things in detail. But when you're finishing up your answer, when you finish and you know you're going to finish, as you finish, turn to another delegate and say, so what did you think about that? Do you agree with me or disagree? Or is there anything you have to add? Is there anything that you think I got wrong? Alternatively, what you can do, if you want to, and if you think there's an opening to do so, is you can turn the tables against the alpha by asking them the same questions that they just asked you. For example, if they asked you about the mechanisms you plan to use to implement your proposals, you can respond by saying, that's a great question. Actually, we were just talking about that and we're still working on it. How would you go about it? Or someone suggested that we do this. What do you think? You give them an opportunity to think, but if they've been asking you a challenging question, what are the mechanisms? How do you plan to fund that? And you start going ahead, and instead of going ahead and allowing them to bombard you with the questions, now you turn the tables and you start bombarding them with the same questions. That can sometimes help you out as well. If you see them bombarding another delegate, step in and do the same thing. Hey, that's a great question. You were talking before about this particular proposal. How are you going to fund your proposal? What mechanisms were you going to use? Right? Don't be undiplomatic when you're doing that. You don't ever want to be undiplomatic, but that's how you're going to have to go ahead and try and wrest control. Before I said wrest control of the group, wrest control for the group. Now, sometimes you need to appeal to their nature to get them to go away. If they're very articulate and they're very persuasive and there's somebody you need in your group, you might say to them, hey, look, Canada, I've tried to convince this group of delegates to get on board with our paper and they're just not listening to me. Can you give it a shot? I mean, I know you know this stuff really well. Or, hey, we're trying to figure out a mechanism to pay for this program. Could you brainstorm with these delegates and try and figure something out? Or do you have any ideas? And can you guys kind of work it out and write it out, and then we'll incorporate it into the paper? Assign them things to do. Acknowledge the fact that they're skilled, but see if you can divert them into doing something else. The key, if possible, is to get them to work on less important tasks than writing the paper, right? To get them to assist other delegates on other parts of the paper, such as the preambulatory clauses, right? They're important, but they're not as important as the operative clauses. Or even communicating the ideas of your paper to other people or to your own group, or to ensure that everyone in the working group is being consistent when they're speaking with other delegates. So you can say, hey, can you make sure that everybody's on board and everybody understands this? Just give them another task. If the alpha is persistent in trying to take control of the paper and continues to be off-putting and rude, and the group has already tried more subtle means of addressing the problem, a more direct approach might be necessary. If you're dealing with an alpha who's socially inept, and that happens, or possesses poor communication skills, that doesn't happen as often, they may be unaware of the impact that they're having on the group. I mean, or it could be that you're dealing with someone for whom being an alpha has worked in their life, right? They've been this way. They're used to coming into group situations, taking control, and getting things done. And if feelings are hurt along the way, they think, hell, that's not my problem, right? So when you're dealing with alphas, you have to begin with the assumption that they're not going to change. So if you think about it, if you've got an alpha that's in your group that you can't go away, you can't make go away, you basically have two options. You can harness their energy and use it to try and make progress on the paper or on the resolution, or you can freeze them out and hope it doesn't create so much drama that it brings, it creates conflict in the entire group. Now, to harness their energy, what you have to do is a direct approach that acknowledges the strengths and the common goal of the working group. Using this approach, again, is similar to what I said before. Pull the alpha aside and say something like, the way you're talking to the other delegates in the working group is making it harder to get shit done, right? And I've spoken with quite a few of them, and there seems to be agreement on two things. They all want to continue working with you, right? Always put a compliment in there. They really like your idea about this, right? They really think that you're excellent at explaining things. But none of them are willing to be treated disrespectfully any longer. The choice is yours. And don't be afraid of silence. When you say the choice is yours, sit there, stare at them, take off your glasses. The choice is yours. You can even wait a little while and say, personally, I hope you stay working with us. You seem like you really know your stuff, right? And see if you can go ahead and affect change that way. If you can't, it may be that you need to freeze them out. If you tried everything and the alpha is still making it hard for your group to make progress on the paper, you may have to cut them loose. And that's awkward, by the way. That's just awkward. So before you go to such extreme measures, you have to make certain that the vast majority of your working group is on your side. And this can be difficult to determine because you don't want to let everybody know that you're trying to freeze out this alpha, because they might turn on you. They might think you're the alpha. They may think you're the one who's trying to do, freeze people out. So you have to be diplomatic. Now, it's going to be easier to remain calm by keeping in mind that your sole motivation for freezing out the alpha is because he or she is hindering progress on the paper, right? Let me just say that one more time. If you decide that freezing them out is the only way to sort of get this done, you have to keep in mind that the sole motivation for doing this is because the alpha is hindering progress on the paper. It has nothing to do with the alpha's value as a human being. And in the same way that you shouldn't take anything personally, you shouldn't make anything personal. Don't talk shit about the alpha, right? Don't be mean. Don't talk disparagingly about them. But once a decision has been made to freeze them out, this is what you may have to do. When an alpha comes to you and attempts to contribute something, you can just say, "Thank you for contributing, delegate," and then immediately return to the working paper. A non-response like that can be extremely effective. So for example, if they talk and attempt to contribute something, you can simply wait for them to finish, pause, and continue working on the paper with others in the group. If the thought of behaving this way towards another delegate makes you uncomfortable, that's a good thing. It means that you're capable of empathy, right? Because that's going to make that other person feel bad, right? And since our goal is never to make someone feel badly about themselves, the working group should only do this if all other attempts have failed. And even then, if it seems like it does work, if the alpha goes away, but pay attention and look around and see what's going on. If they've gone ahead and decided to inflict their alphaness on some other group, right, or some other individual, that's fine. Let them do their thing. But if you see them off by themselves, looking kind of dejected, go over and talk to them. Tell them that you want them back in the group, that you just want it to be more of them as a contributor, not dominating things. Dealing with people, dealing with difficult people is a skill that you're going to learn hopefully over the course of your lifetime. The Model United Nations is this weird place where you get to practice this stuff in like this completely fabricated environment. And it's a good time to start learning how to do this stuff. So that's it for dealing with difficult delegates. Oh crap, 22 minutes.